Hello, everyone. I'm Priyanka Sharma, and I'm the General Manager of the Cloud Native Computing Foundation. I'm thrilled to be here with you today at the Open Infrastructure Community Day, Korea 2020. I can be found on Twitter anytime you like in the handle that is shown in my slides here. You can also check out more about the Cloud Native Computing Foundation at our website, cncf.io. So let me give you a deeper introduction to myself. I have a long history in systems and open source. Four to 5 years ago, when the Cloud Native Computing Foundation was just finding its legs, I got involved as a contributor to an open source project called Open Tracing. Open Tracing is in the observability space and helps folks visualize and understand their systems, especially when they get so complex that no one person understands them. From my journey with Open Tracing, I ended up working at many companies, such as GitLab, where I was the head of director of Cloud Native Alliances and also evangelism. The Cloud Native community has been a home for me for a while, and I was thrilled to accept the role of general manager 6 months ago. As I mentioned before, I spend a lot of time on Twitter tweeting or the latest thing, fleeting, and you can find me there at any time for a conversation. I also advise startups when I have time, and I'm an advisor at HeavyBit Industries, which is an accelerator for DevTool products. So what is this Cloud Native Computing Foundation? Well, our foundation is building a sustainable ecosystem of cloud native software. Now that sounds a bit tautological. What is cloud native after all? Well, cloud native is composable infrastructure that's made primarily of microservices, containers, and builds software in a way that it is fast and resilient. So you ship quickly and you don't break things. Today, the CNCF brings together the world's top developers, end users, and vendors and runs the largest open source conferences. In fact, our flagship conference, KubeCon Cloud Native Con, is happening right now on the interwebs, so anyone can join. And you should totally come by, check it out. Just go to kubecon.io to learn more. The CNCF is a part of the Linux Foundation, which homes the very, very famous Linux project. So how did this all get started? Well, first up, Kubernetes. So many of you have probably heard of it. If not, let me give you a brief primer. So Kubernetes is an open source platform for managing containerized workloads. And so think of it as an orchestrator for different types of containers and services so that everything runs in the right way using compute in the right way. So it facilitates both declarative configuration and automation. Kubernetes has taken the world by a storm. It is popular amongst each and every person I've ever talked to, and it is a change maker in our ecosystem. Computing and software development looks different because of Kubernetes. Kubernetes was open sourced by Google in 2014, and it was in 2015 December that Cloud Native Computing Foundation formed with Kubernetes as its flagship project. So where are we at today? Well, we started with Kubernetes, and its success demanded that we have other projects that think of the whole end-to-end modernization of applications beyond container orchestration, whether it's observability, whether it's container registries, whether it is policy as code. And today, the CNCF hosts 70 plus projects. And these are of different categories. So two categories you see here are our top one graduated projects. These are projects that have gone through rigorous vetting and they have open governance, a robust community, good governance, and they also have passed through mandatory security checks and audits. These are projects that the CNCF Technical Oversight Committee stamps with approval and tells end users to go use without any stress. The second category is incubating projects, that's one level below graduated. And these are amazing, promising technologies that are seeing momentum, have a diverse community, and are starting to build out robust governance. These projects are very successful and are building towards the graduation stage. Finally, we have the sandbox projects. These projects have grown tremendously over 2020. 34 projects in total were added in this year alone in CNCF, many of which were sandbox. Sandbox is the stage where we welcome all kinds of open source technology and provide it a neutral IP zone so folks can come together, utilize the tech as end users, or contribute it without having fear that one company owns it all. These three categories of projects have done extremely well for the CNCF, and today we have seen great results. These results are also demonstrated by the number of members we have. At this date, we are 600 members plus and growing, and we're very proud of our community. A key part of this member group is the end users. We have 140 plus end user members and enjoy the largest end user community in the entire open source software foundation ecosystem. We believe in end user driven open source, and it is these end users that help us achieve that mission. So, what is the cloud native success story? Well, this is how it all started. First, there was no virtualization even in 2000. In 2001, we first got virtualization. Then things moved towards infrastructure as service in 2006. By 2009, we had PaaS, platform as a service. And then there came the open source IaaS, which was OpenStack in 2010. We moved from there in 2011 to get open source platform as a service with Cloud Foundry. 2013 changed a lot of our lives with the coming of containers. Docker gave us the concept of containers, even though it had been floating around since before. Docker popularized and mainstreamized containers. And in 2015, Cloud Native was born. Cloud native software, as I've mentioned before, it tends to segment applications into microservices. Things are packaged into each part into its own container, so you can spin something up and down really easily without affecting other things. And then finally, you can dynamically orchestrate these containers to optimize your resource utilization. This has really seen momentum in our ecosystem. Today, I can tell you there are 6.5 million developers worldwide who are cloud native developers. A very cool thing that has happened is that 1.8 million of these developers have just joined in the last year. So as you can see, momentum is strong. And I really hope you're getting excited by this talk and want to join in as well. 2.7 million developers today use Kubernetes, and 4 million are using serverless architectures and cloud native functions. All these are very exciting things that are happening, and it sometimes can be overwhelming. But there are many, 60% in fact, backend developers who are now using containers. If you're intrigued by all these things, just go to cncf.io as a first stop, and you will find lots and lots of information. Let me tell you a little bit about the latest cloud native survey we did and what we found out about global adoption. At this point, 92% of survey respondents are using containers in production, 300% higher than the first survey we did in 2016. Kubernetes production just in the last year has increased 5% to 83% total. For all CNCF projects held together, there has been an increase of 50% in the amount they were used. Interestingly, we saw that 82% of the respondents are also using CI/CD pipelines in production. I'm curious, are you? Have this discussion in the chat while I continue this talk. When we break down into the various categories of projects that I went through with you just a few minutes ago, when we look at the graduated projects, it's 25% increase overall. That's really great news because these projects already had a ton of adoption. And so this 25% increase really spreads them to the ends of the world. 83%, for example, are using Kubernetes. In incubated projects, there's been an increase of 45%. Again, larger number of projects and so a greater number of increase. And finally, the sandbox project just takes the cake with a number that is so inspiring at 238%. So that's really awesome. We've clearly seen great success in cloud native. What is the cloud native value prop that has made this happen? Number one, how many of you here like to have golden handcuffs? How many of you don't like having any choices at all? How many of you like being forced to use a tool even though it may not work for you? That's exactly what cloud native avoids. We avoid vendor lock-in. Vendor lock-in happens when a certain product is so entrenched in your system that you cannot get rid of it and have to keep paying the fees every year with no choice. Open source breaks that mold. The open source software stack enables deployment to any public, private, and hybrid cloud when it comes to cloud native. That's been the beauty of Kubernetes and the ecosystem. Another factor which is particularly relevant in the age of COVID is the ability to scale. Because of COVID, we have seen compute resources being requested at unprecedented rates. This is because most workflows have moved online. Customers are going online rather than in person anytime they get a chance. There's that much more online banking, there's that much more online education. There's so much online that the need for compute has skyrocketed. What that means is folks like you who are building software every day need to be able to scale quickly. You never know when demand's going to spike. And that's why being able to scale from several nodes on your laptop to tens of thousands of self-healing multi-tenant nodes is what makes the Kubernetes ecosystem so attractive to end users. With all of this going on, with all of this happening, every business has become a technology business. In this world, you need to be fast. You have to put out features quickly. You have to respond to your end users' needs. When that is the case, you need to be agile and able to maintain things clearly. By splitting applications into microservices, which is the cloud native paradigm, folks are and with explicitly described dependencies of these microservices, you suddenly have small things that you can build quickly, a microservice, but because they're connected to the rest, you know what the map is. And that gives you increased agility and maintainability. And that's cloud native for you. Achieving resilience. Well, at this point, our technology is so critical to our business that going down when, let's say, a container went down or a data center had a failure is unacceptable. And that's what cloud native gives you, resiliency. By distributed workloads across data centers, across containers, across machines, you're baking in safeguards so that regardless of demand, you can scale up and down and not keel over. Finally, improving efficiency and resource utilization is important to everyone. How many of us have not had complaints from managers being like, we were spending too much compute? It's a perennial fear, right? Because those are bills that can go up really quickly. And this is where a centralized orchestrating process with Kubernetes that dynamically manages and schedules microservices changes the game. It's also the reason we have so much momentum in the cloud native ecosystem. So things have been going well, as I discussed. We have 600 plus members, 70 plus projects, and I forgot to mention, but 103,000 plus contributors. Numbers are good, and the numbers are diverse. They're big because all kinds of people are joining in. And so as that's happening, what's new and exciting? Let me share a little bit with you. There are lots of awesome projects in CNCF. I picked a few noteworthy ones that you might like to hear about. The first one I'll talk about is the Cloud Native Build Packs. So this is our newest incubating project. CNBs, as we call them, translate source code into container images. This project is super useful. Even in its sandbox days, it saw a lot of adoption. In fact, the previous job I held at GitLab, we used CNBs to great success, and it was very useful for us. Dragonfly. This is a project that was created in China by Alibaba. It's a cloud native image and file distribution system. This joined our incubation stage of projects in April 2020. KubeEdge. One of the things that I see us developing a lot in the future is cloud native edge computing. KubeEdge is CNCF's first project for extending Kubernetes at the edge. It was created by FutureRay and has become an incubating project in September 2020. There's a lot to come on the edge space, and KubeEdge is just the beginning. Harbor is an open source registry that secures artifacts with policies and role-based access controls, RBAC. Harbor comes out of VMware China and graduated in June 2020. Harbor has a lot of love in the community, and I encourage you to check it out. Finally, last but not least is TKV. This is an open source distributed transactional key value database. It's created by PingCap and graduated. So it's a graduated project, which is our top level of recognition for any open source project in September 2020. As we talked about what's coming next and what's exciting, cloud native has reached a level of maturity where it can address the unique needs of different business verticals. One of the most critical and complex verticals in our ecosystem are those telco workloads. Telcos are your phone providers or your internet providers who are pervasive around the world and have brought connectivity to all of us. These folks are one of the oldest technology businesses, having started hundreds of years ago on the copper wires. So these folks went from copper wires to virtualized networking functions, and that was a huge success. Today, telcos have expressed their desire to go cloud native, and they want to have cloud native network functions. So you can see the difference in architectures based on the graphs I have here. At CNCF, we want to support our friends in the telco industry, and we want to do it in the most lightweight, simple way possible. We have upstream initiatives, such as the Telco User Group, which is a group of people that come together, put out best practices. They just actually did a white paper and have an advisory session on what people should be doing. And then we have more on the definitional side. What is a CNF? So we have a CNF working group that hosts the testbed and conformance. We define very, very tightly, as minimalistic as possible, what is a cloud native network function. And then we provide a way for you to test your function against a testbed and then go through conformance or certification to prove that your function is indeed cloud native. The people we serve are the service providers or the telcos, and then the cloud native network function developers, whether they work at telcos, whether they work at vendors, it doesn't matter. The goal is to make cloud native computing ubiquitous, and our leap forward with the telco industry is going to mean a lot. A key to remember is that with CNF conformance, we will be an upstream definition of what makes a telco application active, cloud native. That means any and every project, any technology stack can use us in defining their full stack of how they're going to run telco workloads. We are going to be defining best practices and guidance of how to work in the cloud native principles. The conformance test suite works with the mechanics that are very similar to Kubernetes SIG testing. For those of you who may not know, Kubernetes has been wildly successful because Kubernetes in different vendors is the same Kubernetes. How did we achieve that? We achieved that by providing a conformance program. Any vendor who supports Kubernetes has to check through that conformance program to make sure that their product is the same Kubernetes we all know and love. We're going to bring that same mental model and methodology to our cloud native network functions and give everyone peace of mind. So who are we? When we think of Cloud Native Computing Foundation, I see all of the success that we have achieved, all that we have done has happened because we are a foundation of doers. We are people who get things done. We do it in different ways. I may be giving this talk to you and running a foundation. You may be writing software code that is cloud native. A reporter may be covering our stories. An event producer may be putting venues like this together so we can come and share knowledge. Everybody's effort has come together to create this beautiful, beautiful result for our industry. And that result has shown even in a very challenging year. 2020 has not been a walk in the park for pretty much anybody I've ever spoken to. But we are a very diverse group of people who do different kinds of things, come from different geographies, work in different industries, and together we have built an ecosystem with 70 plus projects, with 100,000 plus contributors, with coming from 177 countries and writing more than 1.3 billion lines of code. The CNCF's top priority remains being a diverse community of doers, maintainers, developers, and users, and helping these people innovate and produce solutions for an ever widening group of business verticals, and ultimately providing value to the life of every single human being. Did you feel a little bit inspired? I get inspired by the cloud native community every day. If you're interested, check out our events and conferences, which are a great way to meet new people and learn about what we do. It's a very welcoming community. You don't need to know anything to join. That was my status when I got involved. I had had a long career in tech before, but I was very new to systems engineering, and the cloud native community accepted me with open arms. As I said, there is a KubeCon Cloud Native Con going on right now, which I encourage you attend. Just go to kubecon.io for more information. And then from there, if you want to look at 2021, our event dates are already announced. In May, we are hosting KubeCon EU, our flagship European event. And in October, we're back to North America again. So I hope to see you there, and I hope you will consider joining our world. Thank you so much for listening to me today. I really enjoyed reaching out to you and opening up my arms to the open infrastructure community in Korea to be part of Team Cloud Native. Join us, innovate with us. Know that you will make lifelong friends and lifelong impact. Thank you so much and enjoy the rest of the show.